Come join us each week as we dive into topics about the joys and the struggles of motherhood. By no means are we experts. We're practically flying by the seat of our pants, or should I say, mom jeans. On this podcast, you will find a judgment-free zone where we discuss not only the best parts of being a mom, but the not-so-glamorous parts too. You can expect unfiltered, real mom talk, humor, grace, and a sense of sisterhood. What makes our podcast unique is that we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to being a mother. We're not going to pretend that we know everything too, because we definitely don't. We just want a place to share our stories with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
Hello, everybody. Happy episode 4. Happy Valentine's Day. We're going to release this a little bit later, but still nonetheless, Day of Love, and it's a lot to celebrate. Today, we're going to talk about pregnancy. This is Michelle here, and I'm planning on kicking off today because I'm pregnant, as we've talked about before. I'm officially like 12 weeks pregnant in 6 days. So we can talk a lot about pregnancy. We're going to focus today on the first trimester. The first trimester is such a doozy, and we'll cover all those reasons why. But, just wanted to kick off today. We're going to talk about pregnancy. First, do a check-in on how everyone's week's going, and then wrap up with a hot topic around going back to work. So that's the goal for today, and excited to really dive in on such an interesting topic. So who do we have here today? We've got
Lisa,
Danielle,
Leeah. Awesome. Great. So, let's go ahead and just start with how was everyone's weeks this week? What's going on with all the babies?
Well, I went back to work last week, but we had 3 snow days, so I only went back 2 days. And then last week on Friday, so still getting used to our new daycare with Aubrey, and there was a bit of an accident at her daycare on Friday, and man, that was pretty traumatic for us, and I'm pretty in such a pickle of what do you do? Do you pull your kid out of daycare, move your kid to a different daycare? Do you say, it's a one-off, oops, that shouldn't have happened. She learned her lesson. It's going to be better. So, and it's been a mental challenge for me for sure. And, Leeah and Michelle, you were both around for when Hannah went to daycare too. And I hated her daycare. So I'm like, am I just one of those parents that's just paranoid with anybody with my kid? Mm-hmm. Yes, a little bit of that too. But yeah, so that's been tough. I went to therapy yesterday and talked to my therapist about it. And that was an interesting conversation. And she was very pro accidents happen. Give it another shot. It's going to be okay. Not to mention, you can't get into another daycare for at least 6 months anyway. So you really don't have an option if you want to stay working, which is just a great thing to hear and great thing to feel. So anyway, that was what was going on with that. And yeah, that's Aubrey, and Hannah is Hannah, little firecracker of a 2-year-old, and she's learning to count, and it's very cute because she does not nail it, but it's cute.
And so you've had Aubrey back in daycare a couple days then? How you doing with all of that?
Yeah, it's been okay. It's tough too. Aubrey's struggling to take a bottle. She mostly feeds off of me, so that's also been a stressor for me as well. So it's it's a lot going on, and I'm hopeful that it'll keep getting better. But her daycare she's mostly with 2-year-olds, and when you're a 3-month-old and the 2-year-olds think you're so cute, and they don't know how to be gentle. So it's hard because it's I'm just having a mental hardship with what to do and where to go and how, what the right thing is to do. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure you guys will be along with my journey here on what to do, and love to hear other people's stories of when they decided it was the right thing to move on and when it was okay, no big deal,
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I was re-listening to our kickoff on episode 1 and just, our tagline, right? We're trying to fit into motherhood. Motherhood is not one size fits all. It's very, every day is just this ethical debate and a series of near misses. And it's just so beautiful, but then it can be so intense. And so, that's what I'm glad we're here sharing, the like unfiltered, the real stories around like, hey, look, I need to work. I need my kids to be in daycare. This is not a great setup right now. And it's been a hard thing. So, all I can say is you're a champ navigating this right now, even though none of us have the answer.
Right. And that's, I think, the hard part. You listen to everybody's advice and everybody's all over the place. Like one person's like, report her. And I'm like, okay, you're like ruining her life if you report her. She's at an in-home daycare. So she is an in-home daycare. One of the things she said was, I understand if you never want to bring her back here again. And it's like, it's tough. She's a very honest person and it's very sweet that she has honesty, but I am not a person that needs full disclosure because it makes me feel less comfortable. As my therapist says, this probably happens everywhere, but you don't hear about it. And it's nice and refreshing that she was honest with you with what happened. But, like you come home and your 3-month-old has a bruised lip and it's like all purple and you're like, this poor baby, and she couldn't feed for a little bit because it hurt her to do that. So I was syringe feeding her, and it was like, yeah, like that feels intense. And when I went to the doctor, because I started to freak out, she wasn't eating. The doctor's like, she took a fall. It stinks, and that's not good. But she's all right. She's gonna be all right. Just kids are resilient. You just, like I said, if this was Hannah, if this was my first kid, I'd been like, out. I'm quitting my job. I'm staying home. She's never going to be watched by anybody ever again,
How's she doing now?
Well, she is over that and the purple is going down on her lip, but she came home with a cough today. So I'm like, oh, gosh, this is endless, but as the night went on, she actually sounded better. So I was like, of course, my crazy mom brain was like, did one of the 2-year-olds put something in her mouth and she's got something stuck in her throat? And, it's like, cause when I got there were 3 2-year-olds and they swarmed her cause the daycare worker was holding her and we put her in the car seat and they all swarmed her. And I was like, this is what happens. So
do you want to give a little overview of what exactly happened?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's definitely a good teaching moment out there is don't put a bouncer chair on a couch. So because of all the snow days, the daycare was letting older kids in because their parents needed to work. It was very sweet of her. But one of the older kids, he's 6, he went and jumped on the couch and it catapulted her bouncy chair onto the floor where her face fell onto a toy. So yeah, definitely like I was talking to a coworker and she's like, it's one thing if you as a parent put your kid on a couch,
mm-hmm.
You know what your surroundings are and you know what's going to happen. And as a daycare worker, that's just not something that is wise. It's just not with that many kids around and that much going on. And all I can think is that she put the bouncy chair on the couch to get her away from the 2-year-olds who were all over her face. So it was kind of like I understand why you did it,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't the right play. So anyway, I'm trying to say, you know what, she won't make that mistake. And I saved some other kid from that happening, I hope, but I'm glad nothing more serious happened. And
it doesn't change. It's your baby. It's tough.
It is. And it's my last baby.
I know.
So it's tough.
Yeah. Well, keep us posted. Leeah.
Sounds good.
Leeah, how's your week going?
Good. Glad Wes is back to school. His tooth finally broke through that he's been teething with, so that's exciting. Hopefully we see a little bit of relief there. He's been really uncomfortable. He's also been crazy hungry still. I know he was hungry last week, but he's still crazy hungry this week. And then I was actually about going back to work. I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I was texting Lisa crying today about being at work. So we can dive into that towards the end of the podcast, but it's tough. So yeah, my week was good. I think we'll take this week to have hopefully a full week of school, whereas next week we have one day off and a half day. So next week is extra short for the little guys, but yeah, I don't think I did anything too wildly exciting this week.
Nice. And Danielle?
Yeah, as I said last week, I'm trying to put myself out there and make more friends, because being a stay-at-home mom obviously can be so isolating, and being a military spouse can be isolating too, because you make friends and then they move and then you have to try to go make new friends. So I did meet a friend, and she invited me out to a Galentine with a couple of her friends. And so it was nice because they're all moms, and just being able to talk to someone else besides my husband. I love him to death, but I need other interaction than just him and Weston. So it was just nice to get out. And of course, we talked about our kids the whole time, but it was just nice to eat pizza and enjoy the night. And then Lisa, you were talking about accidents happen, and they really do. They happen in the home as well. Last week, Weston was playing with the only cabinet that I had not child-proofed. I had child-proofed all the other cabinets, and I left one, so he could explore, pull things out, pots and pans, things that he could play with that I felt like was okay. But I did not check the hinge on the cabinet. It has a perfect little slot that a little finger could go into it and pinch it really, really bad. Luckily, he did not stick it all the way in there, but he did. It kind of fell a little bit, and it pinched his finger, and it cut the skin quite a bit and left a little blood blister, and he was bleeding, and he cried. Not even for a minute. He cried. I gave him a hug, and I tried to stop the bleeding. And then, new mom here put a Band-Aid on an 11-month-old finger, so that wasn't smart either. I was trying to get the bleeding to stop, so I did. I wrapped it in a Band-Aid, and of course, he put it straight into his mouth, and the Band-Aid came off. So I just had to throw the Band-Aid away and just had to let it be. I mean, how do you stop an 11-month-old from putting his finger in his mouth, especially when it's bleeding? I don't know. Send me your tricks. I'm not sure. But so accidents do happen, but I do understand when they happen somewhere else, when you're paying someone to, trusting someone else with your child. I know that can be hard. And that's one of the reasons why, I decided to stay home, because I have trust issues. It's just hard for me to trust anybody unless you are my parents, Ryan's parents, our siblings. It's just hard for me to trust anyone with Weston. We have not had a babysitter. We've not left him with anyone. Obviously, I would trust y'all, but you live 1,000 miles away, so
too far away.
Danielle, you said a couple things. One, that was a reminder that accidents do happen at home. Wes put his hand in the oven yesterday and burned his finger.
Oh, buddy.
So felt pretty bad for him. And he kind of cried for a minute, but then he was fine. And then he also had a cut on his foot. And so I tried to put a Band-Aid on it, and it went straight into his mouth. And I was like, there's nothing we can do. So, we'll do our best. But in regards to trusting people, I've had a very hard time with it as well. And we actually had a friend over the weekend say to all of us, well, you just need to get a babysitter and leave your kids at home. And I think Lisa and I were both very reactive to that, where it's not that simple. You need to trust people. And we have a babysitter, and she's great, but Wes doesn't respond well to her. And so I don't feel comfortable leaving him with her. So it is very hard for sure to find people that you trust. And don't worry, Danielle, I've only left Wes twice, so I'm right there with you.
I definitely think that's a great future episode because
Yeah.
Michelle, we left Hannah while she was sleeping with an 11-year-old. Like, that's definitely not recommended. Don't do that.
Oh, I was thinking of the night with volleyball when I was just postpartum.
Well, yeah. Well, that was during volleyball too, and we were like, she's such a great sleeper. We knew she would never wake up. It was never an issue. Unfortunately, Michelle got her the night she had shots, and it made her throw up, and that was bad. But yeah, anyway, we'll go through that for a different episode. They're going to call CPS on me for saying that out loud, but yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely tough. So I'll give you quick highlights of my week, and then we'll dive into pregnancy. Just this week, we are praying. I don't want to jinx it, but this might be Sierra's first full week of daycare this whole year. So that would be awesome. The other big win of the week is she slept through the night for the first time again in like 2 months, which was great. As y'all know, we battled a little bit of diarrhea, and part of the challenge with that is she was waking up in the middle of the night for having to change her diaper. And so we just really got out of a good sleep rhythm, and it was hard on all of us. And then, I saw a post on Instagram. It was like, is it teething? Is it a new skill? Is it whatever it could be is whatever. So I'm fingers crossed the sleep keeps going well. But then when one good thing happens, the new one is she refuses to get into her car seat, and it's just a temper tantrum. I was like, our 11-month-old supposed to have temper tantrums? Because it's happening. We talked about this. So getting her in and out of the car twice a day has been a new battle.
We still have that issue with Hannah. Like,
don't
fighting
tell me
her
that.
to get in the car seat. Yeah, it's really hard. I don't know. Some kids just, they want to go, like, Hannah wants to drive the car, right? So it's like she wants to jump in the front seat, and it's sorry.
Yeah. Nice. Well, so we have covered in the 4 episodes. We started with why even have kids? Like, why even, get to the spot we are today? Why kind of evolve our lives in the way we've chosen to, and why not have children? Then we talked about kind of the journeys of conception. We talked about the journeys of infertility and how hard that can be. And now we're going to talk about pregnancy. So we kind of stopped at positive pregnancy test and the journey that begins at that point, which is a whole new one. Exciting for many, very challenging for many, and really heartbreaking for many too. So we're going to talk through our first trimesters that we all had. It will not be representative of everybody's experiences that people have had, but we want to kind of give space for some of the other things that can happen in the first trimester as well. So figure what we could do is really start off, again, we talked about pregnancy tests, getting that first pregnancy test, but really talking through kind of what was your mindset like in your first trimester? Leeah and Danielle, I'm curious, and Lisa for your first babies, and then maybe Lisa and I can talk a little bit about how it's been a little bit for the second baby. And then, there's a lot of things we can talk about in here, right? The first 12 weeks are a bit more high risk for a lot of reasons. So how do you kind of navigate the mental level of that? And then we'll talk through pregnancy symptoms. We'll talk through OBGYN appointments, all the blood tests, the genetic tests that go in there, cravings, food restrictions, all the hormones that change. But maybe we just first start off by, just a quick round robin here of what was your mindset when you got your first, your pregnancy test, and then as you're starting to go through your first trimesters. Danielle, do you want to start?
When we found out we were pregnant, we were definitely excited, but also I feel like very cautious. Like, I was guarding my heart. I was guarding my feelings. I just wanted everything to go as planned, and I wanted everything to be perfect, and I wanted the baby to be healthy, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing all the right things to have a healthy pregnancy. And it goes back to my trust issues, just guarding my heart and just wanting everything to go well. So very cautious, making sure I was doing the right things, and just wanted to not do the wrong things. I wanted to make sure that I had a healthy pregnancy. I wanted to continue to exercise during my pregnancy, but also make sure I'm being safe about it, but continuing to do the things that I love, and obviously getting unsolicited advice about, oh, maybe you shouldn't work out, or don't work out as hard as you do. Or so it was just getting a lot of information and just trying to digest what is helpful, what's not helpful, and just, again, very cautious, but also like very excited.
Leeah, how about you?
So, obviously we were elated and over the moon, and something that's a little bit different with fertility when you're going through fertility treatments is the amount of appointments that you have following your pregnancy test. So we actually had an appointment at 6 weeks pregnant, and in that appointment we heard the heartbeat. And then we had another appointment at 8 weeks, and that 8-week appointment was considered our clinic graduation day, which our clinic was amazing and I absolutely loved it. But when they told us we were graduating and moving on to the OBGYN, I sobbed to the point where some of the nurses were crying before we left. They give you this like little gift that I just thought was crazy and so sweet. So I felt pretty good in my mind while I was still under the care of the fertility clinic. And then I had to wait a couple more weeks to go see the OBGYN. And during that time, mind games started to come into play for sure. Paranoia and just, trying to get through that first trimester mentally was a struggle.
Yeah, I definitely sadly didn't, like, it was funny because I was super nauseous, and then the days I wasn't nauseous, I was like, I lost the baby. This sucks. I was so paranoid the whole pregnancy, but the first trimester was really tough. And I remember I actually had like clots come out one day, and I definitely thought I miscarried, and I called the doctor the next morning and I was like, yeah, I think I miscarried. I had some clots, and they're like, it's not really much we can do for you. Just come in when your next appointment is. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was so upset. Like, it's such you feel so long, like having one appointment a month. You're like, that is so long. Like, can't you just let me come in and get the Doppler and show me that I can hear the heartbeat and it's okay? It's first trimester. I mean, it never calmed down for me the first pregnancy at all. The second pregnancy was a bit different, but yeah.
I mean, same for me, right? Like, you get this pregnancy test and you're like, oh my gosh, my whole life is about to change. We're going to be parents, right? Leeah, maybe it wasn't a pregnancy test, but just still the results you got, right? Like, it's this awesome moment, but then reality slaps you in the face at the same time when, all of us have friends who have miscarried in the first trimester, and, and there's just so many things that can go wrong. I mean, if you statistically, there's a lot of more positive stories as well, but you don't hear those as much, right? And so that's what's sitting with you. And then there's this whole dichotomy of like, do we tell people? We can't tell people. Like, should we tell them? Should we not? But then it becomes very isolating and tough there too. So, I mean, we've navigated that, with both the first ones, of this combination of just like you said, Danielle, like, protecting your heart too, of, am I actually going to be a parent on August 23rd, right? Like, I'll believe it when I see it. And I still feel that way. We're past now 13 weeks. We're basically in our second trimester, which is wild how fast this trimester has gone. We heard the heartbeat for the 12-week and we're in a really good spot, but like, there's still this lingering question of like, on August 23rd or around then, will there be a baby? And then of course, navigating all the symptoms that come with it. So maybe we talk about that next, like first trimester symptoms. What did everyone go through? Leeah, I don't want to start with you, but I do know you had an adventure of a first trimester and second trimester and third trimester. But it all starts at first trimester. What happened?
I threw up every single day of my pregnancy. I had to carry trash cans with me to my work meetings. I had to keep extra clothes in my car because I threw up on myself driving to work sometimes. It was uncontrollable. There was absolutely nothing I could do. We tried prescription medicine. I tried every voodoo thing out there, and it just didn't work. I think actually by the end of my first trimester, I think I was down 10 pounds from my pre-pregnancy weight. So that was scary in its own right as well, to make sure that, you know, our baby was growing, which he was. But I ate whatever. At one point, the doctor just said, eat whatever you can. It doesn't even matter. And so I did my best. But I finally went up in weight when I was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh. That's wild. My questions would follow up would be, was there any voodoo magic that worked? And what became like, eat whatever you could? Like what became your few foods that you could ingest?
So I found that on days that I started with a lot of protein in the morning, it was better throughout the day. I still threw up, but it was a little bit less. So I would start with my breakfast and have about 60 grams of protein with breakfast. And that helped temper it a little bit. Preggie Pops, I carried them with me all the time. I took 150 of those. I had the big containers. Those would be good while I was sucking on them. And then I actually also had accompanying migraines, and the migraines went away at the third trimester, which was great. But the first and the second trimester, I had really debilitating migraines. And I found this ice cap on Amazon. It was like $11. Absolute best purchase of my entire life for my migraines. I bought 2 so that I could just rotate them out over the course of the hours that I had them. And then I had some essential oils that I would try to use as well. But there's nothing that cured it, just some things that helped temper it a little bit.
Yeah. We will link the Preggie Pops and the ice caps in the show notes, because that's, I know people are going to be asking. Other question that I know I would ask if I was listening to this podcast is, what did you eat to get 60 grams of protein in the morning?
Mm-hmm. For real.
So I've taken collagen powder for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now. So I put the collagen powder in my coffee, drink a protein shake, and then a bunch of cottage cheese.
Nice.
And that was my breakfast pretty much every single morning.
With or without jelly?
Usually with.
As your doctor says, whatever it takes. So good. That's awesome. Cool.
Michelle, you tell us.
I hate going after Leeah because I feel like, you know, my first pregnancy was very nauseous, had a lot of food aversions, and a lot of headaches. Like headaches were, you know, how I knew I was pregnant the second time, and then, you know, the first one, because it was a abnormal thing, like a very specific headache behind my left eye, which was, like you said, really debilitating, and lots of lethargia, right? Like I feel like I'm such a go person. Like that was such a like slap in the face that I was like, all I need to do right now is lay down and navigate that. So that was something to work through. And then this pregnancy has been interesting because, you know, I'm chasing around a 10-month-old and now 11-month-old. You know, we had COVID, we had a stomach bug, we've had our in-laws in town. My husband just got his ACL surgery. So like, I haven't felt as many symptoms, but I can't tell if it's like, I just don't have time to feel symptoms and I'm just, you know, pushing through, or I really has been a more mild first trimester. You know, same thing, like at least to do what you said before, like I'm always feeling my boobs. I'm like, are my boobs tender today? Like, am I not having symptoms? Like, what does that actually mean? So, going into the 12-week ultrasound, I had my nerves up, right? I was a bit anxious that I wasn't feeling as many symptoms for this round, but, was happy that things were going okay. So all in all, I've had a pretty light pregnancy, your first trimester, and, just trying to navigate that. So Lisa, Danielle.
I fortunately did not have any morning sickness. I always feel bad about saying that, but yeah, I had no morning sickness whatsoever, but I did have terrible headaches. Sometimes it would turn into migraines, and I could not get them to go away no matter how much water I drank or if trying to use essential oils. I tried to do unmedicated, but eventually I did just have to break down and take a Tylenol, even though I didn't want to. But that was about the only thing that would get rid of my headaches. I had also stopped drinking coffee right before I was trying to get pregnant. And my doctor was like, maybe you should just add that cup back in of coffee to help alleviate those headaches. And I did, and that did seem to help. The other symptom I had was extreme fatigue. I was very tired. At the end of the day, I had a very active job, an elementary school PE teacher, so you can imagine I'm just running around all the time. And so I would get home and I would be wiped. I didn't want to make dinner. I just wanted to lay on the couch and just take a nap. And I'm a really bad napper, but during my first trimester, I was a great napper. I love naps. The other one, like I said, I had tried to stay active. I was active before pregnancy, and so I was trying to keep up that activity level. And I did notice I had to dial it back a little bit because I was getting lightheaded and dizzy, and that's never happened really to me before. One time I remember texting my sister and was like, I'm going to pass out. I don't feel so good. And she came downstairs. She was living with me at the time, and I was in our garage gym just laying there like, oh, I just got so lightheaded and I was shaking. She got me a snack and some water. And so after that, I realized I have to eat something before working out or during my workout to be able to continue to work out at a level that I wanted. So those were my main, I guess, pregnancy symptoms during my first trimester.
So with Hannah, our first, I was really nauseous my first trimester, and it was same thing that Leeah said. I had the Preggie Pops. I don't know if mine were pops or drops. They were drops anyway. Same thing Leeah said. Like when I was sucking on them, good. I felt good. But the minute I was done, it was like, that's useless. It didn't do anything for me. So that was tough. But like I said, I felt comfort in being nauseous, because then I was like, well, I'm probably still pregnant then, which is, the mind games we play with ourselves through all of that. And I had I was tender. I had tender boobs for sure. And that was another one of mine. But for the most part, all of my friends know I am obsessed with cheese to a big fault. And I had cheese aversions through the entire pregnancy. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I also in the first trimester started craving milk. And I had been getting sick from milk for many years. So I was like, that's weird. So then I started drinking milk and I did not have any issues, which is weird because Hannah will not drink milk. She will not drink milk no matter what we do for her. She'll drink it if has strawberry in it or chocolate in it, but she won't drink milk. And I drank so much milk. So maybe she just got sick of it through my pregnancy. But yeah, I was looking at my notes because I have notes from my first trimester. Again, we talked about this in earlier episodes. Take notes. It's like so fun to look back and be like, oh, I totally forgot about that. And also to be able to, not that you want to compare your kids, but compare like, when did that start happening? Oh, that's right. Okay. But I have in my notes that I went camping twice in my first trimester. I got on a quad with Michaela, and she took it as rough as she could. And I at the end I got back and her mom was like, aren't you pregnant? And I was like, I am pregnant. And she's like, you should not be on a quad. And I was like, whoa, yeah, holy cow. I totally forgot about that. And then I went hiking with Leeah right at 3 months, like we talked about in a previous episode, to the highest point in Arizona. So that was pretty fun.
You were pregnant when we did that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I was 3 months pregnant at that point, and I was like, man, I hope the elevation's not an issue. You know, like, I'm sure it's fine, right? Like, people do way worse. So yeah, like, I tried to stay active and tried to, like, I was very much, like we talked about, very afraid of miscarrying. So I was like, okay, it's like, you know, I'm not going to stop my life just in case, like, things don't work out. I want to keep doing the things that I normally do. So yeah, so those were the things of first trimester that I have written down.
Super interesting. Just wanted to quick interject, right? Like, none of us are doctors. None of us are medical professionals, right? And so when we've said things like, you know, if you don't have symptoms, it could be a sign you're miscarrying, right? Or things like that. Like, we're not, you know, bringing that from a science base. I think that's from like a society based, you know, approach. Same thing with, you know, elevation or, you know, different types of things that might come up. So just encourage everyone to do their own research, talk to their OBGYN on what's best for you, for your, you know, your child, for your setup, for your lifestyle, to make sure that you make sure you make the best decisions for yourself, because, you know, it's just kind of tricky.
It's so like, to add to that point, like you're going to hear, and later in this episode, we're going to talk about things that we did and didn't do. And I had two different doctors. I had a different doctor for my first pregnancy than I did my second. And some of the things that they said were so completely opposite of each other, working out of the same office.
Yeah.
You know, like, they just have totally different belief systems. And like we talked about before, you know, we don't want you to listen to us and be like, well, she said that. And Leeah has talked about how she listened to a lot when she wasn't getting pregnant. And that probably wasn't always helpful, you know, and sometimes maybe those points were great, but sometimes those points would send you in a tailspin. So please, again, we look at this as like our therapy, talking to each other, and a yearbook of what we went through. So
I listened to a lot. I researched a lot. I you know, subscribed to a lot of things. But one of the things that I would say, the only thing that I regret is that I listened to a couple different things that said, don't work out hard if you're trying to get pregnant. And Danielle, this goes back to your comment, right? And so I actually stopped running, which is my favorite thing to do. Run a ton of half marathons. It is my hobby. And I stopped running, and I look back and I totally regret that, because I lost 2.5 years of doing something that was so good for me mentally, and physically. And then when I was pregnant, I was so fearful as well. So I completely stopped exercising during that entire time, which didn't do me any favors. But it was all because I heard something somewhere that said, maybe you shouldn't run if you're trying to get pregnant. And I think that's so important, to just make the decisions that are best for you. We are not doctors. That is my only regret in this entire process, is now I'm trying to start running again, and it's so much harder than it was.
You'll be back before long, one step at a time. But absolutely, it's, you know, there's so many things that there's endless. I was talking to someone, right? Like, or just thinking about the internet, right? Like, you sit and you scroll and you hear these 1-second blurbs of information that we turn into like scientific research. Like, oh, I saw in this post that, you know, this was true, and then all of a sudden assumed to be true. And that's just such a really scary way to live life. And because no one on the internet is, not no one, most people on the internet are not scientists. They don't have good data behind it, and it's really hard. So one of my pieces of advice, like, you know, we can talk about the books we read and people have different opinions. I read both Emily Ester's books, Crib Sheet and the other one that I need to think of the name. And I ended up saying, hey, this is the one person that I'm going to use as my source and not take 100 different sources sometimes, because that can create so much, convoluted information. Say, I'm not going to get it perfect every time, but I find her to be well-researched, science-backed, and have good data against it. So she became kind of my one standard I followed as we go through this. So that would be, I don't know if there's any other books people read, or, if we want to talk a little bit about the differences in OBGYN, the opinions, Lisa, that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, just really quickly, it looks like the other one was called Expecting Better.
Yes, Expecting Better.
Does that sound right?
In Crib Sheet by Emily Ester. Yeah, we'll link those as well. She's someone who, first of all, here's my quick rant on baby books. Like, when you run a recipe on the internet and you Google, I don't know, chicken pot pie, and all of a sudden you get all these people's live stories and you're like, I just want to know the ingredients and what's in there. That became my frustration with all these baby books. I was like, I'm so glad, your siblings with these people, and I'm so glad that like this is where you live and your family's set up. And I'm like, I really just want to know the facts, and I want to know the data, and I want to know the details, and I want to know what I need to know. Like, just give me the print recipe and print it out. So I had a really hard time finding baby books that I was interested in. And again, Emily Ester's were really good ones because, I think she would set them up well. She would have a lot of data, a lot of graphs. Pictures are really my thing.
Michelle's thing.
Yes, pictures.
Yes,
and
speak
then
in Michelle's language.
Very visual person. And then at the end, she would have key takeaways. So like 10 bullets that summarize the chapter. And I still reference all of those today. So I think that for me was the format that worked best as you navigate all those. Because again, I like that she was research-based. I like that, good data. So I don't know. Is anyone else as crazy as me when it comes to this stuff?
Really quickly, I just want to jump in and say the jump to recipe button was the best thing that ever happened to recipes.
Yes.
I'm sorry to my cousin. My cousin is like a super, super awesome food blogger. And I talked to her about that too at one point, was like, listen, I can't stand reading this people's life stories. Like, just give me the food.
Give me the food.
Yes.
So the author of It Starts With an Egg, which is the book that I talked about on the last podcast, also has a book called Brain Health from Birth. And her name's Rebecca Fett, and she's also very scientifically research-based. And so I really liked that book. That was the only one that I read during pregnancy. I read a birthing book, but we'll talk about that later on. But I did really like her research base on how to just have a healthy pregnancy. I don't know if it's true or not, or based off of it, but one of the things in her books talked about how to hopefully have a baby who doesn't have jaundice. And when you live up at the high elevation that we do, a lot of the babies do have jaundice. And I followed her recommendations in the book, and the nurse said that our baby was the least jaundiced baby she'd ever seen. So not to say that that's the reason why, but I took a lot from her book as well.
I'm gonna have to read that section. My daughter did have jaundice when she was born.
I also was in camp no books. I didn't read any books. We in the third trimester can go over classes we took. I took one class and that was a disaster. But anyway, tune in later for that. But no, I'm a person of too much information. Like, I'll take it all in and then I'll get really overwhelmed because, like you guys said, it will be too much and I don't know which one to go with because everybody contradicts themselves or each other. And it just was so, I couldn't handle it. Like, we'll get to it when we get to third trimester, but man, I really, really struggled with some depression during pregnancy as we got in further, but the more information, the worse it would get for me. So even Googling, like I would Google very, very sparse, like quick, like first answer I saw was the right answer if I absolutely had to Google stuff, but I had to get away from it. So I'm going to sound like a huge jerk in this, like, oh, I didn't need any books. Like I'm too good for books, but I literally, like, information was just, it made my depression worse. So I just couldn't handle it, and I didn't do it. So I read all my smut novels, reading about people having nice sex when they weren't pregnant.
I mean, I don't think you sound like a jerk at all, because I think there's so many people, and myself included too, while I do like data and information, there's definitely a line, right? And, there's this stance of staying positive and manifesting things versus hearing all these crazy things that can happen. So I hear you. And I think a lot of people are going to be in that same camp, Lisa.
So I'm a learn as you go type of person. Also, I just need to be hands-on to really learn. So I'm not very good at reading a book and then, I guess, applying it. So I'm just kind of winged it. I felt like I did read a little bit of Heidi Merkoff's book, What to Expect When Expecting. But I will say I didn't finish the book. I actually enjoyed the app a lot better from Heidi Merkoff, What to Expect, the app that you can get on your phone. And it was nice because I could see the developmental stages, what I should be experiencing in pregnancy, what size the baby is, and even what the baby looks like in the womb. So I thought that was really awesome. And I got a lot more out of that than actually the book. I'm a visual person for sure. I also read Baby Wise, which wasn't even helpful until Weston was physically here. And it was by Robert Buckman and Gary Ezzo. And it's more like a sleeping, feeding schedule. And we'll get to that much later. But what I did read was Harry Potter. I started reading this series before I was pregnant. And I was like, I have to finish it before I give birth. And I did. I've grown up with the movies. We watch some movies every year for Christmas when we're starting to put our tree. It's my husband and I's tradition, but I've never read the books until now, and I should have read them sooner because one, it just makes a lot more sense, the movies, and then just goes into more detail, and it was just amazing. So yeah, Harry Potter, y'all. If you haven't read the books or seen the movies, you have to. I've been trying to get my sister onto watching the movies, and she will absolutely not do it. So it's unfortunate.
Should we link that in the bio? If you haven't heard of Harry Potter, here's the link. Just a quick circle back there, Danielle. My doctor said, whatever you do not read What to Expect When Expecting.
Oh gosh.
Because it makes you feel like you're terminally ill. Like it's very negative and very bad. And again, like, don't listen to what we say, but that's what my doctor said. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that. But I did get the What to Expect When Expecting app. And I used that in my first pregnancy, but then I changed over to Ovia pregnancy for my second pregnancy. And I actually liked the Ovia app better than the What to Expect, though the What to Expect was pretty good too. Just a thing.
I was going to ask, I use both Ovia and What to Expect. I like What to Expect because the videos are cool. I think it shows like your baby developing and what's happening. And then Ovia it's very like jump to the recipe. It's very, here's the direct things that are happening. And they, like you said, it's very digestible. And then I love thing I love the most about it is you can see like the size of that baby's hand and foot, like on your phone. That's like a really cool touch. Leeah, Danielle, did you have any other apps?
I didn't do any, and now I feel like I kind of missed out. But I'm similar, right? Like I liked facts, I like research, I like science, I like data. But I have to have parameters around how much of that I'm intaking. And so I do live a lot of my life in ignorance is bliss.
You guys have taught me so much. Michelle and Leah, you guys have taught me so much that I didn't have with Hannah because I so lived in the ignorance is bliss realm. You know what's sad is that in Hannah's pregnancy, I always lived a week ahead. So I always wanted to know what was going to happen next week. I never lived in the present, whereas with Aubrey's, like there would be weeks where I would completely forget to look.
Totally.
Right. But with Hannah's, I was like, oh, I want to know what's going to happen next week. I just wanted to will that to go so much faster. Yeah.
Now that we're talking about this, I forgot that Steven was the one every Wednesday morning to pull up on Google what to expect when you were expecting. I totally forgot about that until you're saying that. So every Wednesday morning we would talk about it, but that was the extent of it.
Yeah. And that's great. Like, that's awesome. I was going to say, would love to talk next about, the OBGYN experience. Just like Lisa, you said, it's different for every OB, for your first trimester or first pregnancy versus second. I talk to friends who live in Colorado. Their feedback is completely different than ours. So I guess I'd love to just explore that topic a little bit, right? Like we've got a lot to still cover in this first trimester, right? Like genetic testing, blood testing, food restrictions that are that were recommended. Lisa, is there anywhere you want to start?
I could actually probably group all of those in together because, like I said, I had two different doctors. So my first doctor gave me a packet that, like, I can't remember, and you guys could probably remind me, like, I can't remember what the grouping of weeks was. It was like 6 week periods, 4 week periods? I have it somewhere. Anyways, and she wouldn't talk about anything at our appointments. She's like, did you read the packet? I'm like, yeah, I read the packet, but I have a million other questions. So I would put in my notes like a million questions, right? That I would want to ask her, like, is it normal that this is happening? Is it normal this is happening? She didn't believe in genetic testing. So with Hannah, I didn't do genetic testing because she said, if you're not going to do anything, like if you're going to have this baby no matter what, what's the point of doing the test, right? Whereas my second doctor was like, you should do the test. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm going to keep the baby no matter what, right? And she's like, but wouldn't you want to know and prepare as much as you can? And I'm like, sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll go do that. And then find out insurance doesn't cover that and you have to pay out of pocket for that, which wish I would have known first. But yeah, like we talk about this a lot. And like Danielle said, we don't actually live in that small of a town, but it feels small because we have two doctor's offices here. And, I went to this doctor's office and it's a lot of, same thing with like foods, things to stay away from with foods. Both doctors were like, eat whatever you want. Like the first doctor was like, I'm not telling you to eat lunch meat every day, but 3 times a week, probably cap it at 3 times a week. And I would talk to my friends in Chicago about that and they're like, excuse me? No, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, right. And like, same thing we'll get to in later episodes of like, oh, so are you dilating? Like, did they measure you on that? I'm like, they don't believe in that here. Like there's no real point to that test. And in our doctors, that's what our doctors said to us. Like, we can test you if you want to, but it's not a real good indicator of whether you're going to have that baby within a certain length of time, So yeah, I know I skipped all those topics really quickly, but yeah, it's for me, like, I like information, but I don't like too much information. This was too little information, So it's like, you can't win. You can't win.
Well, I feel like our doctor, because you and I had the same doctor for your first pregnancy and then that I did for Wes, we had the same doctor, and I just felt like she wouldn't offer up any information unless you asked her questions. And even at that point, it was very nonchalant, and that every single thing was normal. And maybe that's true, but she was not forthcoming. And she has a fantastic reputation here in town. And in fact, one of my really good friends, who I hope one day can be a guest on our podcast, highly recommended her. And so when my pregnancy aligned with her calendar, I was super excited. And then she was fine. I think it was fine. It was, for me, it was really disappointing because I had come from the fertility clinic that I loved, that I had a nurse on call 24 hours a day, that the doctors were amazing, so kind, so warm, so welcoming, and forthcoming with information. There was a little bit of a culture shock going from being such a high priority client to just being another one of them in the line, where she was just cranking through all of our pregnancies.
Danielle, any ads here?
I just feel like every doctor's different. I know that when we all had COVID and we were pregnant, each doctor recommended that we do something different. Like mine was wanting me to take an aspirin every single day to, I guess, thin my blood because they were worried about blood clots with COVID and being pregnant. So, and I think somebody's doctor didn't recommend that. They didn't say anything like, oh, you're fine. So it's just like, there's just so many differences. And I don't know. I know some doctors are like, eat lunch meat. And mine was like, no, probably don't eat lunch meat, which I was so sad. My sister brought me a Jimmy John's sandwich and it smelled so good. I love this spicy Italian. So the number 7, and it has salami on it and all the things. And I'm like, I don't know if I can eat this. And then I cried because it smelled so good and I really wanted to eat it. So that was my first meal after giving birth, was a Jimmy John's number 7, just so you know. But I didn't eat it and I gave it to Ryan. It was a really sad day. But other than that, yeah, I would just call my doctor and like, is this okay? So I might get a little hate for this, but I am a hunter. My husband and I like to hunt, or we like to go for a hike and really not see anything because we haven't got a deer or an elk since we've been here in Montana. But we would need to go more for that to happen. But I called my doctor and I was like, what if I see a deer? Am I allowed to shoot it? Like, will me shooting a gun affect my pregnancy? Will it affect his hearing? I was like so worried about it. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. As long as you're out in the open and you're not like in a shooting range or something that's enclosed. And so luckily it didn't even come to that. So it's fine. It's fine.
I, just a quick thing. And again, I'm not a doctor, but the Ovia app, pregnancy app, has a, section, and I'm going to look it up, where it tells you whether it's safe to take certain drugs and not to take them, or if they grade them on levels and they tell you, which I thought was really cool. So I would like quickly Google that, or put that into my Ovia pregnancy app and be like, okay, can I have aspirin? Can I have whatever? Because like we said, I didn't feel like I could trust my doctor on that stuff. So yeah, I recommend that part of it too. It also has food safety lookup. Sorry. Which I never used because I didn't want to know. So I would just eat whatever I wanted. Like my second doctor was like, you can have sushi. Like, when have you heard of people getting sick from sushi? And I was like, I mean, she's like, well, maybe not like grocery store sushi, but like go to, a restaurant, but you have just as much risk eating peanut butter or bagged salad or cantaloupe, all the ones that have had recalls. And I'm certainly not going to tell you to not eat that stuff. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we could talk about food restrictions and how we navigated that all day. I was also going to, Lisa, to your point, you're like, when you Google food restrictions, also be aware on how you phrase it to Google, because it's like, here's a real Google example. Is tiramisu safe for pregnancy? And you'll see like, yes. Or if you Google, is tiramisu not safe for pregnancy? You'll be like, definitely not safe, right? So it's sometimes it like pops up different things on how you can find articles for the affirmative and negative too, depending on it. So again, that's not a good answer because all of a sudden it's like everything would have a pro and con to have, but it's tricky. So I was going to wrap up the OBGYN question and thought we could maybe end the first trimester on gender, on figuring out the gender. So think about that, because I think that's something you don't have to decide in the first trimester, in the first 20 weeks, but you start to have the opportunity to do so. So I'd love to kind of hear people's process on that and their conversations with their partners. But I was just going to say, like, with the OBGYNs. I also think there's a big difference on your first trimester, your first pregnancy versus your second pregnancy and the OBGYN experience, like just the types of questions you have, the type of TLC you need, the type of hand holding versus the second one too. Like, you know, I'm preparing my questions every time, but you know, my appointment was only 5 minutes on Tuesday. And I was like, I was okay with it. Right. Versus I'd come back to you all crying. I was like, I didn't learn anything in my first appointment, like, or this appointment. What do I need to ask? How do I get information out of these, the people we work with too. So anyways, on to kind of our final topic of our first trimesters, unless there's anything else people want to cover. But Leeah, I know you're in your own unique scenario, but Leeah, Danielle, Lisa, how did you and your partner think about finding out the gender of your child?
So for us, Brandon he likes information. He's an engineer. So he was like, oh yeah, we'll definitely find out. And I was like, no, I love surprises. I love surprises. And I loved the entire time through my pregnancy being like, it's a girl. It's totally a girl. And then the next day being like, I had a dream it was a boy. It's a boy. It's totally a boy. And I loved that back and forth. And there were temptations with the scans of being like, should we just find out? And Brandon's like, no way. We've gotten this far. We're not finding out. And then when it came to Aubrey, I was like, Brandon, it's your choice. We can find out, or we can not, because I got to choose on the first pregnancy. You choose on this one. He's like, let's just not find out. Let's just do it again. And I was like, yes, this is the best. And it was the same thing, like a lot of people had told us going into the pregnancy, and actually like the birthing is more, it's a little less painful when you don't know, because you're so excited to find out what it's going to be. And the prize at the end is so like, oh my gosh, what are we going to have? What are we going to have? So I have no idea if that's true, because I don't have anything to compare it to, but we decided not to, and I don't regret that decision for a day. And we'll go through this later on, but I was very nervous about finding out about Aubrey, because I really thought I wanted a boy. Like I was like, we're going to have a boy. I had a younger brother. Brandon's the younger brother to a sister. Like I was like, we're going to have a boy. I'm not worried about it. But I know we're going to have a girl, I feel like I'm going to be in mourning for a little bit. Whereas like when the baby's here, and if the baby's healthy, obviously, and you want to know the baby's healthy, I won't have the time to mourn that I didn't have what I thought I was going to have, or what I had always dreamed of having, the girl and the boy. It turns out that I still went through that mourning period, and that mourning period probably was shorter because she was here and I loved her so much. And I felt a lot of guilt of feeling that way towards her, because I never wanted her to think I didn't want her. I wanted a boy over having a girl, but I'm terrified of girls and I have 2 of them. So anyway, too many words. Go on, somebody else.
So Lisa, I want to go back to, because didn't you have an ultrasound where you thought the ultrasound tech slipped and said she when you were pregnant with Aubrey?
So many funny things. So first of all, the first pregnancy with Hannah, Brandon came to a scan and he was like, I saw ovaries. I was like, I don't think you could see ovaries in the scan, Brandon. But okay, you saw ovaries, right? Like, this is so funny. I was dying. Anyway, So with Aubrey, the girl, she like confirmed when we were going back for the ultrasound. She was like, you don't want to know, right? I was like, don't know. But if you tell us, like, if you end up slipping, it's okay. It's like, it's not the end of the world, right? And she said she, and I was like, it's a she? And she's like, and she like walked it back. And I was like, okay. And then when we left the appointment, Brandon's like, did you hear how many times she said he? And I was like, did you hear how many times she said she? So we totally like heard different things, and yes. So yes, I heard she, he heard he. So
in theory, I would love to be surprised. But if you ask Ryan, I'm the worst person to try to surprise because anytime that he's ever tried to surprise me, I've like guessed or figured it out. And so I'm really hard to surprise or to be surprised. And I'm a very impatient person, which we've talked about this. Like, I just need to know right away. So I don't know how you did it, Lisa, how you waited. And me, I would be asking the question, is it a boy? Is it a girl? I don't know. I need to know. So it's so hard for me. We got the test done at 13 weeks and they put it in a little envelope and I took it home and I put it on the fridge. My sister wanted to plan a gender reveal for us and we were going to wait a little longer. And I was like, no, you need to plan it within a week because I got to know or I'm just going to look at it on the fridge. So she planned it pretty quick and we shot off the confetti and the blue came out. And so we knew right away, you know, obviously it's a boy and we were just so excited. But yeah, I don't think I could wait. I know a few people that are pregnant right now and they're going to find out when they give birth, which is amazing. It's just not for me.
Yeah, that's how my husband was like, needed to know. I remember we did the genetic test for Sierra and got the envelope and we weren't doing anything fancy. It was just a FaceTime call, but I had to sit on the envelope in the car just to make sure he didn't open it. Like he was so eager, you know, although I've talked this whole episode about how I love dated information. I actually think I could have made it with both of them to the end, but it is nice to know. So it's, we're going to find out for baby number 2 and do a gender reveal at Sierra's birthday coming up. So, Leeah, anything to add? Where were you guys at?
I would have never made it. No chance. So we obviously found out, I mean, before I was even pregnant.
Right.
And we did share with people like right away that we were going to be pregnant with a boy or, you know, whatnot. But no, that was one thing where both Stephen and I were like, yeah, we need to know. We want to know. We want to plan and prepare. And so, yeah, I told Lisa this through both of her pregnancies. I don't know how you do it. And it made me crazy that she didn't know if she was having a boy or a girl. And I was like, you're being selfish by not finding out because I need to know what you're having through both of your pregnancies.
Well, that's the funny thing because I'm like, Michelle, as soon as you get your envelope, you have to run it to my house because I need to know what you're having. Like, what? Like, that's ridiculous, right? But I love, like, my cousin is very pregnant right now. She's due in March at some point, and she I love baby names. I love hearing what baby names people are pondering. I love hearing what people like. Somebody just had a baby and I was like, but what was the baby's name? Like, like, not is she okay? Like, is everything all right? Like, I just love that side of things. And so I'm living vicariously through my cousin right now and she's going to hopefully listen to this at some point. But she like at one point was like, we haven't narrowed down to 13 names. I was like, 13 names? Like, I couldn't even get 2 names. Like, I couldn't find names. That was so hard for us.
I was wondering, did any of you try any of the old wives' tales to try to guess the gender before you knew? Like, I did the weird one where you take a necklace with a pendant on it and it swings either in a circle or like across your wrist, and one's a boy or a girl. It was so weird. Like, we did it over my wrist and it was doing what it does for a boy. And then we'd hold over my sister's wrist. It wouldn't do anything. We'd hold it over Ryan's wrist. It wouldn't move. And so it just really creeped me out. So I was like, we have to stop. But we had a friend over and he was like, y'all are just making it move. And we're like, okay, you try then. And he did it. And he's like, okay, this is just weird. And yeah, so we stopped that. But did any of you try any of those?
I'm like I don't know why, but like I did do the Chinese fertility chart for both. And for me though, like doing a wise tale, I think would make me like, if it's not the real data, like I don't want to know, right? Like I don't want to have a feeling without what actually is is true. Maybe I'll do it afterwards, like on some of the things to see what it would do. But I don't really want to know one way or the other until I get the results back.
Two things. My symptoms all would have said I was having a girl. And Michelle, I need to know as soon as you get the test results, because I need to know if I give you the boys' clothes or if when our in-laws come out, I give them the boys' clothes, because you guys both got the test done on the same day.
Oh my gosh.
They haven't found out.
Oh, did they don't know yet?
And my test is until next week. So I got the kit and I'm scheduling it for next week. So.
Okay. I thought you already did it.
Not yet.
But I need to know as soon as you have the results, so I know how much clothing I'm sending back to Colorado or not sending, so that I can make sure, if you guys are both having boys, that I divvy up things appropriately.
So kind of you.
I think this podcast is not going to be good for me, like wanting to stop having kids. Like being around you, Michelle, like I have pregnancy envy so badly. Like I loved being pregnant. I loved being pregnant. And I even as we get to the third trimester and like the issues I had with Aubrey starting in the second trimester and everything like that, we'll get into that. But like, I loved it. And so it's like so hard for me because like even having Aubrey as a little baby right now, I'm like, I'm never going to have this again. You got to be kidding me. I can understand why that lady had 19 freaking kids because the babies are just so darn cute.
And counting, right? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good segue to like, let's wrap on the first trimester. We could talk for days and days and days. We didn't even get to like hormone craziness that happens in this first trimester or things like that. So I'm sure it'll come out over the span of this podcast and its longevity. But, so next week we're going to focus on the second trimester, which, it's dubbed as the golden trimester. But, there's a lot of highs and lows to that too. Like while I didn't have nausea, I had a lot of physical pain in this trimester where I was pretty immobile for some of it. So we'll talk to some of that. There's a lot of things that you have to start thinking about, like baby showers, maternity photos, like you're going to start to not fit in your clothes. Like, actually I'm already not fitting into any of my clothes anymore. So, just making those things happen. And then, the week after we'll go to the third trimester on, the calm before the storm in some ways.
Oh my God, this is actually happening.
Yes. Holy crap. This is moving and grooving. So we'll talk about those in the following weeks. And then we're going to kind of continue to follow that natural journey and succession of, everything from deciding to have children to pregnancy, to, birth, to the fourth trimester and beyond. But for today, let's wrap with quick topic. And we're going to start with Lisa because you went back to work after maternity leave. So we like to do a hot topic of something that's happening in one of our lives. So it's fresh, it's raw, it's real. So Lisa, what's it been like leaving your second maternity leave and going back to work?
Yes, it's interesting, right? Like we have this battle all the time of, am I doing the right thing? Leeah and I had a conversation earlier today of, what are we, are we doing the right thing for our kid? Like, I feel guilty all the time, but mom guilt is so real. But like, we do need the money that I bring in, but I work part-time. So I don't bring in a ton of money. And I'm like, should I just stay home and stay with my kids? And I know for me, I'm not my best self if I stay at home. Like I give Danielle so much credit for being able to do it. Stay home with Weston every day is like, to me is like, oh, man, you're so awesome. That's so, so cool that you can physically and mentally do that, because my brain wants that outside connection and that sense of, I don't want to say importance. I don't know how to phrase it, but I'm definitely a recognition person, and you don't get recognition from your 3-month-old when you are at home with your 3-month-old all the time. I kind of, crave that. And so getting back to work was really nice, of like feeling like I was doing something important and doing something for me and getting out of the house and having that separation from my kids to make sure that I'm healthy and happy so that they can be healthy and happy. But of course, a lot of guilt comes with that. And so that has been a struggle of mine and will always be a struggle of mine, unfortunately, that I have been trying to work with my therapist on, is how to get over that every single thing I do could be wrong for my kid and mess them up in the future. And this poor therapist, man, she's getting her money's worth out of me. So anyway, yes, good to be back. Glad to be back at work. But my baby feels so young. You know, it's funny when we were just talking about, so I said to Brandon, can you imagine living in like a Scandinavian country where you get 6 months of paternity leave? He's like, no chance. Like I couldn't do it. Mentally, I couldn't do it. And I'm like, such a different mindset when we live here and we don't get as much time with our babies as they do in other places, and the bonding and where you're expected to stay home for an entire year with your babies in other places. And we're like, get back to work within 6 weeks. It's nuts. It's crazy. But I also understand it. So I don't know. Hard to say. Ramble.
We could do a whole episode on women's and mothers' rights and work policies. We probably have someone on that specializes in all this because it's wild. Remind us, how long were you out for maternity leave?
I was 3 months with each of them, which was great that I had that flexibility to do that long.
And you know, in the spirit of being raw and candid, like, was it paid or unpaid?
No, I didn't have any pay. I didn't have pay for either of them because of working part-time.
Mm-hmm. But beautiful, you got that amount of time. So that's awesome. Leeah, Danielle, you know, I know you've been back for a little bit, and Danielle, I'd love to hear kind of your take too on all of this. But Leeah, I know you've had a roller coaster of a week with
it's
going back to work.
Interesting because, like we've talked about, the last 3 weeks, Wes has been home from school for the majority of the time. And it was really hard to work with him home, but then I also got used to having him home while I was working and kind of figured it out. And taking him back to school was tough. And for the silliest and best of reason at the same time, because he loves the school. He does great. He's happy there. He laughs. He's learning things. His teachers love him. And that made me really sad because I'm like, well, I'm missing that part of his life. And I have to work. It is what it is. I also have a great job. And so, you know, I'm fortunate for that. But I work so that I can give him a good life. But what's the point of working to give him a good life if I'm missing his life? And that's what I said to Lisa earlier today, because I feel like I'm missing part of it. And I'm driving over to the school as fast as I humanly possibly can at the end of the day to get him. It induces physical anxiety in me because I just want to be there and I just want to see him. So I've had a really hard time with working. My dream was to stay at home, but it just wasn't. We could have made it work if there was a couple different things and situations in play, but a couple things that we said that the reason I would go back to work would be, one, if I got a job with the company that I got hired with last year and that I'm with now. And then if he got into the school that we got into, because that school is really hard to get into. And so we said, if those two things aligned, then, you know, I would go back to work. And I don't know. I can't say if it's been a good or bad decision because I don't know. I don't know how he's going to turn out. I don't know how this is impacting him. He's a great, happy, chill, cool baby. And that's why I really enjoy spending time with him. And I really miss him when I'm not. But yeah, I think, you know, what's interesting about it is that I've been back at work for 7 or 8 months now. And I still go through this battle at least once a week. I don't know if it's ever going to stop. But, you know, we just hope that we're doing the right thing. And I cherish our weekends together so much. want to keep him all to myself, which I know probably isn't good, and he needs to be socialized and go to music class. But yeah, it's interesting. And specifically today was a very hard day. I cried talking to Lisa, and I cried talking to my sister, because I'm just like, is this the right thing? So I don't know if that goes away. Maybe somebody who's been a working mom for years can tell us. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been back for the exact amount of time, and same, like I am every week. It's an up and down journey. I do know for me, work has to be part of my identity somehow. And, you know, I kind of had an opposite effect this week, right? Like I've been so excited that Sierra can go back to school full time this week. I loved my time with her, but I also did love my days back and having my independence and things to that effect. So, but then, you know, and I feel guilty about that too at the same time, right? It's, you know, being able to have both, and, you know, and then cherishing the time together. So it's a never ending question, and that I'm going to have in my own head. I think we all will have. I think our moms and dads will still have too. And so, you know, I'm just trying to, for me, like someone asked the question, like, what are your goals for the year? I'm like, you know, there's been times in life where I'm going to prioritize work, me, etc. But like this year, my goal is prioritizing Sierra and baby number 2, and work will come in when it can, and make that happen. So yeah, it's tricky, but I'm right there with you, Leah. Just every week, every day, every minute sometimes is like, am I doing the right thing? And how can we show up for both?
I will say, with him back in school, I finally got our laundry caught up.
Yes. The never ending laundry pile.
Just wait until they start potty training. The laundry gets even better.
Yeah, I don't even have words. I mean, I'm just don't even know where to start on that. It's amazing.
I texted Leah today and was like, can I put essential oils in my laundry, because the stuff smells horrible. It's terrible.
Well, Wes gets messy enough at school every day that he like almost always comes home in a different outfit. So
yeah,
when you add in that capacity to it as well, it's going to be a lot.
And Danielle, end with you here. I know you didn't officially go back to work, but like, I'm sure your mind's going many different places as we talk through it, but like anything else to add that you're thinking through?
So I had planned on going back to work this past year. I had Weston in March, and I was able to take FMLA until the end of the school year. I didn't get paid for it. I got to use the rest of my sick leave, and I was donated leave, but there's a cap on it. So most of it was not paid. And I was planning on going back in the fall. So I had all summer. So by the time I'd be going back, he would have been about 6 or 7 months, which would have been a lot of time and amazing. But the closer it got to, the harder it got to like want to go back. And I felt dread and anxiety, and I cried. Ryan kept saying this whole time, you can stay home. You can stay home if you want. We just need to make a decision. I just felt like it's what I was supposed to do, what I need to do, what society says I should do, go back to work. And I decided not to. And I did decide a little too late, according to my contract. I had to pay out of my contract to not go back to work. Teachers already don't make enough money, and then the school system made me pay a couple thousands of dollars to get out of a contract when I'm already going to go down to a single family income. That was really hard, but it felt like the right thing to do. So I didn't go back. And a lot of the things that y'all are saying is a lot of the reasons why I decided not to go back. I just didn't want to miss that time with Weston. And yes, we're having to make sacrifices. And yes, we might not be able to get to do the things that we used to or as often. You know, we love to travel, and now we have to make sure that we have the means to do so. But for me, it's worth it. And I know we'll have a whole episode on staying at home and what that looks like. But I will tell you, it is hard. Today, I was crying just because I feel like I've had a rough week just doing all the things. There are no breaks. there's really no time to yourself. I mean, it's a lot. I will say having a supportive partner has been amazing. He's just aware. He tells me like, thank you for doing all the things, for cooking us dinner, for cleaning, for being there for Weston. So it is nice that he recognizes that. I also recognize that he goes to work all day and, works hard, and then he comes home and then he's 100% in helping where he can help, playing with Weston, giving him a bath, putting him down for sleep, and, spending that 2 to 3 hours that he has in the afternoon with Weston and his family. And so that's been amazing too. But again, we're going to go into staying at home and what that looks like for me. I'm not your trad wife. I'm not wearing dresses or making bread. So no leggings, and I'm like in survival mode most of the time. So can't wait to share that.
Yes,
we absolutely should.
Definitely.
No
definitely.
doubt about it.
Well, as I'm hearing all these, I'm just like, not to bring back our tagline again, but like trying to fit into motherhood. Like that is what we're all doing. We're trying to fit in. We don't know the answers. We don't know what we might be doing 6 months from now. Every day we might make a different decision. And, I hope that resonates with a lot of people, because we're all just trying to fit in our own ways, in our own lives, in our own situations, and trying to make it work and make the best decisions for our families and our children. And there's so many things that are at odds when that comes in. So, well, that's a wrap on our first trimester podcast. As always, you can find us at, most social media platforms now, on our website at momjeansthepodcast.com, on Instagram at momjeansthepodcast.com, on X/Twitter, on YouTube, and streaming in different places. And please, please, please email us with questions that you want us to answer live on this call. And that email is hello@momjeansthepodcast.com.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening.